The opium, you made a point about the 6 million people and Afghan opium. I think legitimising it isn't, if we can legitimise it and then use it in Western markets or in Africa, that's fine. We don't need a military occupation for that. But I think until the General McChrystal just said the other day about changing the strategy, we've been trying to actually prevent them growing opium. And most Afghan farmers, you've got to think it's a war zone. They're trying to make a living. If they can't make a living from growing wheat, they're going to have to grow opium. But most of our effort has been to prevent them growing opium. So, again, I would say we really need to pull out. It's not for us to decide what an Afghan farmer wants to do or not to do. If we wanted to say that, look, Afghanistan, whichever government comes into power, we would like to legitimately buy opium from you, that's a decision we have to make. But allow them to decide whether they want to do that. One of the reasons opium, as you say, is 40% of the economy is because of all the resources I mentioned earlier on aren't being allowed to be developed because we're in a war. So no issue with that one, but that's not what they want to do right now.
Okay, 3 more questions, Tim.
I'd like to make a short contribution later after questions, please.
Yeah, I'd like to ask about the motion that's here in my guidebook, which you, Joseph, helped to draft and refer to. And ask, I've forgotten your name. Fareed. Ask Fareed. How you would feel if someone like me, as a Green Party member, was not very happy with item 3 in the motion, calling for a regional agreement with the powers bordering Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, together with Russia and China, to hold a peace conference as soon as possible with the aim of establishing a new Afghan government which will have the support of all the Afghan people. Now, my hand would shoot up into the air if asked to vote for numbers 1, 2 and for the general thrust of the motion. The immediate withdrawal of the UK forces, the withdrawal of NATO forces, for reasons that you eloquently put. But I find that one to be too much of a wish list. I find it to be too unlikely, and anyway, perhaps not something that I would want to see, that Russia and China should be involved in a peace conference, which then went on to establish a new Afghan government, in the wording that's here. Which will have the support of all the Afghan people, we assume, somehow or other. So I'd like to know what you, Fareed, and perhaps Joseph's comment, if there were someone there who wanted to propose an amendment to this that said, oh, we're not having item 3 because it is just too unrealistic to be credible, or to be something that I, for example, would want to vote for. What your response might be to that sort of point.
Do you mind if we disagree?
No, of course.
You used the word realistic. I think so Joseph is the signatory to the motion, but I would support Joseph on this for the very word realistic. We've had decades where we have been involved. I've gone back to the 1820s down to now. And we cannot put hand to heart and say what we've done is good. And the situation today is what the Afghan people want. That election is fraudulent.
Sure.
Now, I've seen this before. I've done a previous talk, and as soon as you mention the word China, warning bells go up in a lot of people's heads. That's why I deliberately brought that comment about would you want Chinese troops in Europe, just to get people's reaction. What we're trying to say is, in a form, is realism, because, as I said, if you look at our policy, we want withdrawal. If we then want UN troops if we're saying we don't want to cut and run and leave them to be, and we want to have some sort of framework, the obvious framework is the UN. But if the UN goes in there and the regional neighbouring countries say we don't agree with this, you can imagine just how long that UN mission would last. It would be a trap. You would have the Pakistanis in there. So for that reason, we're saying it's best to have them in the tent than outside. And it's best to have a regional agreement where they're involved. They call the shots. I mean, even when there are no Chinese troops in Afghanistan, they win a $3 billion contract to mine the copper. They're being invited in. The Russians, for example, have offered to help America with non-military aid. They're already there. When David Miliband and Hillary Clinton starts talking to the so-called good Taliban, eventually you'll find the Russians and Chinese will be in the equation. The NATO forces need them. You might have noticed there was a convoy that was shot to pieces in the Khyber Pass a few months ago. It came from Karachi in the south, and the Taliban blew it up. As soon as that happened, Iran said, well, we don't know, we couldn't help you, but you've got to get rid of the sanctions. It's geography. And we can't have this island. If you look at the map, we can't just go in there and somehow, without having forces in there, decide a military solution when you've got nuclear powers here, you've got nuclear powers there, and everything I talked about with gas and minerals, you need gas pipelines to go in certain directions. So if, for example, there was an Afghan government and they says, okay, we will build a pipeline to the north or west or whichever, it has to go to the neighbouring countries. So whether we like it or not, the regional, the neighbourhood is going to be in it. And all we're saying is, we might as well talk to them now, bring the solution, rather than doing what we've always done, which is impose our will. We try to impose our will with 104,000 troops, and we still can't do it. So if we don't talk to the neighbours, how on earth are we going to do it?
Okay, I agree with talking to the neighbours.
Can I just-
Sorry, hang on.
So can I just say, what happens with motions if people have strong views on one thing or want to discuss it? You can go to the workshop. There is a workshop on this. Is it 9 o'clock start tomorrow morning? And what you do is you can see if you get other people's opinion and then ask to take the motion in parts. And then you get the whole of the conference to do it.
Yeah,
but I do support it, I must say, all the way through. But that's the way you could do it.
Will you be at this workshop then?
Yeah, I will be attending it, probably sitting in the audience, but yes, I'll attend it tomorrow.